Having spent the last 30 years of my life in the law, the one thing I am convinced of beyond all doubt is that wealth, power, and privilege are not good for children. Hi, Tony DeWitt here. I'm a Missouri appellate attorney, retired, and I bring you a fresh perspective on the law without offering any legal advice. So pull up a chair. This is what we're discussing today. I know a gentleman who was very, very wealthy. He had made a big name for himself in his career field and had done quite well. Um, and as a result of that, he had probably more money than he would ever need in his lifetime. And as a result, he would take his children fabulous places, Paris for the new millennium when it clicked over from 1999 to 2000. They were there. They wanted to be there for Y2K. They had dinner at the top of the Eiffel Tower, and everybody who knew these people knew that they were a good family. They were nice people. They were not the kind of people who would ever be associated with doing anything bad or criminal. But while mom and dad were that way, the exposure to money and power for the kids gave them no moral compass. They didn't ever have to work for anything. They just went and said, "Hey, Dad, can I get a new car?" And the answer was always, "Well, sure, go pick one out." And as a result of that, when you don't teach your children where money comes from, or how it accumulates, or what to do with it after you get it, you very often wind up with children who are not particularly good, uh, not ambassadors for the family name. I'll put it that way. And I think in this Raoul Valley case, that is a little bit of what we're seeing here. I think, and I have to admit to being just a little bit prejudiced in this regard or biased in this regard because they're going to a Catholic private school, and parochial schools are notoriously expensive. You have to pay for that private education instead of relying on the free education that the kids in the public school get. And it creates this aura of prestige, this mystique of being, the elite, so to speak. And people actually start believing that nonsense. And pretty soon they're of the opinion that what they leave in the toilet has no odor. And as a result of that, I think they tend to it takes them a while to reach the plateau of being a decent human being. Longer, perhaps, than it does kids who actually have to work for a living, who might actually have to work for part of their tuition or part of their living expenses while they're in college. And this case is fundamentally about a rumble between two schools, or the kids between two schools. And what I don't think, well, I know when I was in high school, I would not have appreciated the fact that if I got into a fight and I hurt somebody else, that it would be like dropping a stone in a pond. There's an initial splash, but then the effects of it go out in a widening ring. And this case definitely shows how it affected not only Mr. Valley and Jimmy McGrath, who was killed, and Tommy Connery, who was cut in all of this, but it affected other people too. Now, the other day, the Tyler DeSilva was testifying under a non-prosecution agreement, and I thought his direct examination was pretty much the same as everything else I'd heard. He described where he was, what happened, where it all went, and then it came time for the cross examination. And you can see the defense attorney in this instance working very, very hard to try and craft a narrative that he wasn't trying to be violent. He wasn't in this to be a fighter. He didn't go out looking for a fight. Let's watch.
I wouldn't say worried, but I was expecting a fight.
You were expecting a fight at that point. Everybody was expecting a fight between Jack and that kid, right?
Yes.
And that kid had come with another kid, right?
Yeah.
And where was that kid?
Just standing off in the distance.
And you told us before that you had brought 2 bottles of, is it Kinky? Like Kinky? Okay. And you got that from a liquor store?
I did.
You had a fake ID?
I did not.
How'd you get that at the liquor store? You stole it?
Talk well with people.
You talk well with people. Talked your way into getting 2 bottles of liquor
Yes.
without having to show an ID.
Yes.
Pretty slick. You'd agree?
How lucky?
Got lucky. Had you done that before?
I have not.
First and only time you'd ever talked your way into some liquor?
Yeah.
Not the first and only time you'd ever talked your way into something you weren't supposed to have?
No.
You told us that you drank some of that in the car, correct?
Yes.
And that was on the way to go pick up Mr. Valley
Was.
from his house. He didn't come out with any liquor, right?
Did not.
He didn't come out with any weapons, did he?
Mm-hmm.
Did not.
He came out with his girlfriend, McKenzie Trafficante.
Correct.
They hopped in the car with you guys and you went over to 5 Lazy Brook, right?
Correct.
No talk in the car of anything violent, fighting going on, anything like that?
No.
Basketball, I'm sorry.
Just socializing.
Just basketball group chat hadn't started yet, right?
Now we're going to hear about McKenzie here in a little bit, but right now, the narrative that he's crafting is they were just kids out on a weekend night, getting ready to go have some fun. They weren't really thinking about fighting, and if there hadn't been several people stabbed and one of them died, that might be a really great narrative. But I'm not sure that narrative is going to sell very well with the jury. It comes across as him minimizing what their intent was at the beginning. It doesn't really apply to what their intent was when the stabbing went down. But now Tyler's going to talk about the first fight over at Lazy Brook and what happened shortly thereafter.
And then you described what you've called a usual high school party happening at 5 Lazy Brook.
Right.
And we saw the photograph. That was you, or that was Jack and Raul at that party, correct?
Yeah.
And did you see he had something around his neck, a pillow of some sort?
Neck pillow.
Neck pillow? What was that about?
I don't know. He's trying to be funny.
Okay. Was that fairly consistent with who Mr. Valley was, trying to be funny?
Yeah.
And there was beer pong going on?
Correct.
But it was actually water pong? Is that what you were telling us?
Oh, usually nowadays, the way beer pong works is they fill up the cups with water. You have to refill them with beer, and you just take sips of your beer while you play.
So as not to waste beer.
Yeah, that and, I mean, so you're not chugging half a cup of beer every time you get a cup.
Gotcha. Evolution of the beer pong game.
I would say.
And you said that there were words exchanged in an argument between Mr. Snyder and Mr. Hines, right?
What?
They squared off, right? Your recollection was that Mr. Snyder was the one who threw the first punch, right?
That's what I remembered, yeah.
But then you watch the video and you say you can see that Mr. Valley throws what you described as a sucker punch, right?
Yes.
Mr. Hines and Mr. Snyder, you would agree, they were sort of squaring off and moving around, trying to get position on one another.
They were, yes.
People in that crowd that were watching, which you were one of, you didn't know which way they were going to go, right? Eventually, you saw Mr. Hines tackle Mr. Snyder, right?
Yes.
And they go to the ground and sort of go off the screen, what looks like behind a minivan of some sort.
Hmm.
You join the fray.
Yes.
Mr. Valley joins the fray.
Yes.
Who else joins the fray at that point?
Only 3 people I remember is us 3.
You would agree, however, after watching the video, there were more people that joined the fray, right? Some girls come over.
Yes.
Yes. Some other people come over, it appears.
It looked like.
Did somebody pull you off, or did you stand up on your own?
I standed up on my own.
Okay. Did you ever see Mr. Valley take that motorcycle helmet off?
No.
Did you see him swing it at anybody? people were struggling to get people off in that video, right?
That was a tense fight.
It was kind of a quick fight.
Well, yes.
You said folks got up, separated, right?
Yeah.
The two kids who had come that you were trying to keep out, they left.
He did leave, yeah.
And you said then the party went on for another 30 to 45 minutes?
Did, yes.
Okay. What was going on during that 30 to 45 minutes? Just more of the same typical partying?
Socializing.
No talk about let's go get into a fight, anything like that? And then you said Mama Lifer came and shut it down, right?
He did.
Told everybody to get out of there.
Yeah.
You left Lazy Brook Road trying to figure out what to do at that point. Is that fair to say?
We're trying to look for another party.
Were you trying to look for these kids that had just come that you just kicked out of the fight? Was Jack, who had just sort of been getting the worst of that end of the fight, was he angry and wanted to go find those kids?
McKenzie, I'm going to direct your attention to May 14th of 2022. Do you remember that day and why?
That was an awful day. One of my good friend's younger brothers died that day.
Previous to today, do you recall meeting with me, McKenzie?
Yes,
Okay, and why did we meet?
we met to prep me for the trial as a witness.
And are you prepared to testify today?
Yes,
How old are you, McKenzie?
I'm 20 years old.
And do you have a nickname? Do people call you something other than McKenzie?
Not really. Mainly by my full name, McKenzie.
And do you go to school?
Yes, I go to Fairfield University.
And what year are you?
I'm a rising senior.
And what is your major?
Finance and accounting.
You're home for the summer. What are you doing for the summertime?
Working.
In your area, your field?
Yes.
And other than when you're in school, you indicated that you live in Shelton.
Yes.
And who do you live in Shelton with?
I live with my family, my 4 older sisters, and my mom and dad.
Did you attend Shelton schools growing up in Shelton?
Yes.
All schools, including high school, or did you attend a different high school than a Shelton high school?
So up until high school, and then I attended St. Joseph High School in Trumbull.
And you indicated St. Joe's is located in Trumbull, Connecticut.
Yes.
And what year did you graduate St. Joe's?
2022.
Did you play any sports at St. Joe's or do any activities?
I was a cheerleader and a lacrosse player.
I'm going to direct your attention to the year of 2022. Were you a student at St. Joseph High School at that time?
Yes.
And what year were you?
I was a senior.
In May of 2022, were you dating anyone?
Yes.
And who were you dating?
Lido Valley.
Does Lido go by a different name,
Raul.
but you would refer to him as Lido?
Yes.
How long did you and Lido date?
3 months at the end of the year.
So after Valley left without her, he had taken her to this thing, and then he left without her. She caught a ride from her sister, and on the way home, she hears all these texts about somebody being hurt at this party, so she texts her boyfriend. And to put it bluntly, Lido isn't honest with her and leads her to believe something that, while it was probably comforting to her, turned out not to be so.
Okay, can you see that on there?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the blue writing that you see there, whose handwriting, or withdrawn, whose text messaging is the blue?
That's mine.
And the white that you see there in States 97, whose is that?
Lido's.
Okay. Now, McKenzie, I'm going to ask that you read, I'm going to read your parts into the record and publish it, and you are going to read Lido's parts into the record, okay?
Okay.
So in States 97, you indicate, and you said you contacted Lido first?
Yes.
Okay. And you indicate, are you serious? I hate you. Someone just called me and said you stabbed someone. You just ruined everything, Lido. Literally ruined everything for me. Answer the phone. IDK, what to do? Everyone is texting me. What does IDK mean?
I don't know.
And if you can read Lido's parts, please.
I didn't do anything. I wasn't there. Stop texting anyone. Stop answering.
After this text message conversation with Lido, did you have any other communication with him?
As I was still in the car, I called him. He answered, and for about less than 2 minutes, I continued to ask him what was going on. I'm hearing all these things. What's happening? What's going on?
What was his response?
He said, "I wasn't there. I didn't do anything. What are you talking about?"
So he kept denying that he was there, kept denying that he did anything.
Yes.
And this phone call was before or after you arrived at your house?
It might have been I was still sitting in the car in the driveway.
And for how long did it last for?
It was under 2 minutes, and I remember hearing voices in the background.
You were hearing voices in the background. Did you recognize those voices?
No.
McKenzie, when was the last time you saw Lido prior to today?
That night.
Now, after the text messages with Lido and also the brief conversation you had, did you realize at that point the severity of what occurred at 43 Laurel Glen?
I was in shock, but I also didn't fully believe that something bad had happened. I now at this point was thinking to myself there must have been a fight between boys, like a fist fight, and maybe a bunch of kids got kind of beat up or black eyes and stuff. I didn't even think that anything else could have happened.
And at what point, McKenzie, did you learn about what happened that night to Jimmy?
When I had gotten home, I went to bed. I figured I'd wake up in the morning and it would have died down, or, if there was a fight, something would have died down. And I was woken up in the middle of the night. The police wanted to come question me. So I went downstairs to my kitchen table with my sister. And I remember my parents went to the door to open it up for the police, and I just remember my mom screaming. And then at this point, I was like, what's going on? Something seriously bad must have happened. Still, I didn't know the extent to what had happened. So they sat down. They just asked me about my day, like you're doing, about my night. And when they had left, my parents had told me that Jimmy had passed.
And what was your reaction, McKenzie?
That was the worst news, the worst night of my life. I fell to the floor. My entire family fell to the floor.
It's easy when you're analyzing trials and listening to testimony and thinking about what the lawyers are doing, which is what I do, to lose sight of the human cost of these things, of these things that happen. Somebody's life was ended. Somebody else's life, in Raul Valley's case, his future is ruined. It probably is not going to exist in any credible way. These are tragedies of immense proportions, and in some ways, I feel some degree of compassion for Valley because somewhere along the line, nobody really gave him a moral compass. Nobody really taught him how to manage anger. And that's a real shame because clearly this is one of those anger management situations. If the guy ran back to the car to get the knife, he could have gotten in the car and driven off. That would have been the smart and safe thing to do. Nobody would have died. And it's a real shame that it had such a huge effect. I'm sure it affected the students at both of those high schools, and that the next week around that town was pretty awful. So far, McKenzie has put the most human face on this tragedy. You can tell that it was hard for her to testify. It was hard for her to point out who the defendant was in the courtroom. And it was very hard for her to basically say, I haven't seen this guy since the day he stabbed my sister's friend to death. That's pretty powerful right there. And I really think that in her case, this was one of the most upsetting nights she had in high school. Now, it will certainly be a life lesson for her. It will probably be a life lesson for Tyler Da Silva since he got a non-prosecution agreement. And if he hadn't gotten that non-prosecution agreement, well, he might very well have been charged with as an accessory to the crimes that were committed on that night. A lot of times when people go out looking for a fight, they get one, and the only fight you are guaranteed to win is the one you don't get into. I wish that is one thing they taught a lot more of in high school. That's what I have for you today. I hope you found it helpful, interesting, or maybe both. If there's a subject you'd like me to discuss, please feel free to send me an email at the address above. If you like what we do, please feel free to subscribe and come on back to the beach tomorrow. I release videos every weekday, weather and work permitting. If you have the opportunity today, do a kindness for your fellow man. It makes the world a better place, one kind act at a time. And now, YouTube has some suggestions for other videos of mine that you might like.